It's been said before, and I'll say it again. Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. So where would you rather be than right here and right now on the Ralph Rant? Let's go.
Welcome to the Ralph Rant, your source for hard-hitting Buffalo Bills takes. Now, here's your host of the Ralph Rant, that veteran watcher of generations of Bills teams, the prophet who predicted Josh Allen's greatness, that opinionated so-and-so you've walked out on parties because of, the Ralph.
Welcome to the Ralph Rant, and welcome to the Brady Bunch. Some of you might actually remember that show. I might actually do a thumbnail that shows those 9 squares. But here we are. The Buffalo Bills have named Joe Brady, Bills offensive coordinator for the last season and a half, the new head coach. And it's just like, you want to create a Twitter storm? Go ahead and name Brady the head coach. Are people going crazy about this already? This will be a lot about your comments here today. In fact, I plan on doing if I could ever find this mouse, do a recorded vid that will cover this. But I really want to talk out the points a little bit ahead of time, because otherwise I'll sit for hours trying to say exactly what I want to say and talking it out here. I don't have to worry about second takes because there is only one take. And I'm just scanning the comments now that I see. I just see an assortment of comments. They just cross the range of what you might expect. And I think we need to there's a couple of things I think get exposed by what's gone on here. I made some notes. I don't know. I made a few notes a little while ago. I've got pros, I've got cons, and I've got questions that have come up. But we want to try to get our arms around what this hire actually means. And I think part of the problem that people are having with it is the fact that we had seen this same thing for so long with the Bills, the same failure mode occurring just about every playoff tournament they've been in. And we have the feeling that in order to really make the change, there needs to be a big change. Now, Grant Udinski or Brian Daboll. No, a lot of people that want a Brian Daboll, that wouldn't really be that big of a change. And I think there's a little problem hiring Daboll. Maybe not. Let's get this phone on silent. You know, we use the parallel of Elway when Dan Reeves coached the Broncos, and Elway had lost 3 Super Bowls under Dan Reeves. Now, McDermott never even got Josh Allen to a Super Bowl, but there is a parallel there. And the parallel continues when you had offensive coordinator Mike Shanahan actually leave the Broncos, go coach the Raiders, not do a very good job of it, and then come back as the head coach of the Broncos. And then he took the Broncos to 2 Super Bowls and won them with John Elway. And that parallel didn't happen with Brian Daboll coming back. I'm not so sure how far you could go with the parallel, because you end up looking at it from one hand. Oh, that's how Elway was successful, bringing back an old OC. But on the other hand, when you've had an organization that is done as well as the Bills have, as far as they have gotten. And then you're talking about bringing in a coach that just basically was fired mid-season and ended up with 4 wins. It makes you question bringing back Dayball. I actually have been wondering about this a lot, and I'm not that upset about it because I'm not of the mind that a lot of people are, that this wasn't a big enough change, because I think nothing was going to satisfy a lot of people other than this huge dramatic change. And the fact is that the Bills, they really aren't that far away. If we watch the conference championship games this week, if you could bring yourself to have watched those this past weekend and realize that the Patriots skated in on this, the Bills should be going to that Super Bowl. But are not. And I think with that mindset, you're like, well, we're maybe we're never going to get there, or maybe we're really that close. I have the thought that they were that close, but the biggest question, the very bottom thing I've written on my note sheet here, is this question: is this yet another? I'm going to call it a Mick indictment, a McDermott indictment. There are already some out there, even earlier in the season when the Bills lost to teams they never should have lost to. Atlanta, that one game would have made all the difference. Or how much difference would it have made if Josh had completed the 2-point conversion to Khalil Shakir against the Eagles? That would put them in the 5 seed rather than the 6. That would have sent them to Pittsburgh, as it turned out. And then they would have ended up going perhaps to Houston at that point. C.J. Stroud is a mess. I think the Bills would have won that game. It's just uncanny how whatever could possibly go wrong, whatever small little incident can occur that just derails something, as I've just explained there, can always have this effect on the Bills. And I want to talk about this from a standpoint of trying to judge how Brady is going to be as the head coach of the Bills by drawing a comparison to what Sean McDermott was as the coach of the Bills. And what I've maintained is McDermott came in to the Bills as a first-time head coach. It wasn't the biggest hire to ever make news. The Bills were coming off a 17-year playoff drought. They had gone through some jokes at head coach. We recall the Rex Ryan days. Although I still like Rex. But when McDermott came into the Bills, it was a situation where the team was down. The team had been in the playoff drought. There was really nowhere it could go but up. McDermott definitely wants to create a situation where he gets in and aces this job. It's his first shot at this, being a head coach. So I think he goes in and just goes overboard, inventing what he ended up calling the process, which I think was just being ever so meticulous on details, going really deep on every subject you could probably think about, checking, double checking, first guessing, second guessing, third guessing, everything he did. And it just seemed as though it worked, obviously. He made the playoffs in the very first season with Tyrod Taylor. They went to Jacksonville and lost. It's a blessing that happened, and it's also maybe a curse that happened, because I think what happened was McDermott then felt, oh, I went in as a brand new head coach. I went overboard in establishing what my process should be. I executed the process. We made it to the playoffs. That means that the process has to be what it is, and that has to be continued to be developed. And I think that set McDermott on a path that perhaps in what his personality was just even coming into the job. But I think he was tight. I think he was rigid. We've heard examples of that. We're hearing more examples of that. Go listen to Ty Dunn on his Go Long podcast, where you're hearing reports from former players, from former coaches and so forth, that are making remarks that make you kind of understand that Sean McDermott was kind of tight, was kind of rigid. And I think that developed, again, because he won enough to make the playoffs in his first season. Of course, they went 6-10 with Josh as a rookie the next season. But after that, it was bombs away, and the Bills made the playoffs 7 straight seasons, ending up in this last loss to Denver. And I think that McDermott's mindset was forged by making the playoffs in his first season with that stringent process that he created. And now the only thing he thinks is, I've got to use the process. I've got to push the process. That has to be the way I do things. And I think it developed deeper and deeper because they wanted to try to get there, but didn't. And I think the 13 seconds, for example, made it even more difficult. And then there was the McDermott problem. Again, Ty Dunn's piece of journalism on the Bills that revealed more. So it just seems like that McDermott was hardened into this rigid, unswerving, got to do it a certain way type of coach, which maybe only started to ease a little bit this past season. We saw the snow angel he does with Josh Allen in the end zone after the one win. But I think it's a situation where McDermott just got really, really tight. And now the question we have to answer, because if there was a first indictment of McDermott, it was the fact that the Patriots won the division with a first-year head coach and a second-year quarterback who doesn't impress me that very much. The next indictment was that Patriots team is going to the Super Bowl. Since the last Super Bowl the Patriots played in, and now to this one coming up, and the Bills could not find their way to the game at any time in that space. That's another indictment of Sean McDermott. But is this the biggest one of all? Because one of the obvious things with the hire of Joe Brady is that Joe Brady is going to keep around people, at least on the offensive side of things, that he had previously used. Normally, when a head coach is fired, the whole staff is gone. There might have been a hint in the fact that the entire staff was not relieved along with McDermott when this occurred. But the fact now that Brady is in place is a further indictment of McDermott, in that it wasn't the overall organization. It was you, Sean. And that's an indictment. Whether it's correct or not, we will see. And we will be able to see by what the Bills actually do. Now, on the other hand, Joe Brady has gotten a lot of head coaching interest in interviews in the past couple of years. Teams are seeing something with him. He's definitely more vibrant than McDermott. I just watched on X a quick video. I think I still have it up here. Yeah, I don't think I can get it over. This had to be when they, I don't know what game this was, but it's showing Brady up in the booth, just like pumping his fists and being really excited about what just happened on the field. And you never saw that with McDermott. Now Brady's going to be on the sideline. I think it's going to be an entirely different situation on the sideline. I think Joe Brady will actually speak with with Josh Allen. Got to get McDermott on my brain. I think he'll speak with Allen. I think there will be communication on the sidelines. I think it is going to be a difference, but Brandon Beane and Terry Pagula, for whatever else you think, must be thinking in that sort of realm that McDermott was a lot of the problem. There was a stifling of things. There was, of course, I think, disagreements this season. We saw it come out in press conferences. McDermott referring to the offense as being cute, of course. That was a direct result to trying to run the end around to Dawson Knox that was fumbled. Let's get to some of the comments here. I mean, before I do, I'll just hit these pros and cons really quick. I don't have too many of them. On the pros, my very first item is continuity. There's a continuity. There's not a reinvention of things, which might not be a good thing, but there's a continuity. But for that very reason, what I just said, there might not be have to be a total reinvention of things. Down on my cons list, the very first item there is also continuity. On my pros here, this will reveal what McDermott was, for better or worse. We're going to find out. Next, familiarity may speed the process up of getting the Bills going, and who knows? We don't know Joe Brady. I think Joe Brady is sharp. He's measured in what he says. We don't get to hear him a lot. They're just a offensive and defensive coordinator presser after each game, but you don't hear him multiple times through the week. You don't get him on shows and other things of this nature. And if he is this offensive mind, is he one of these offensive minds that we talk about so much with Grant Udinski? Or Shieldhouse from the Rams, or Davis Webb, for that matter. But the last thing I'll say on this is what becomes ultra important right now will be the selection of coordinators, the offensive and defensive coordinators. I think Joe Brady's intelligent. If he's learned everything, he knows he'll need help on offense in order to actually be the head coach. I think they've seen him already demonstrate his personality and capability, not just in the interview setting, but being around the Bills for a couple of years, well, longer than that. A couple of years as an OC, but longer than that, even as a coach. So I think he could be the CEO of this team. But let's get to the comments here. Jimmy Jam is with us. I've never been a fan of the Brady offense of runs and short passes. I think we were a better team under the past OC. That's true. And that brings up the first question. I mean, is there a particular way that McDermott wanted the offense to go? How much of what Brady was directed by Sean McDermott's overall wishes? On one hand, you could say, all right, McDermott is a defensive head coach. He got more involved with the defense as the season went along, ended up calling the defense. How much of a control freak was McDermott? Did he still manage to make sure that how the Bills were playing on offense was going to be what it was? We'll get the answer to that question. I don't know. I think we'll also get the answer to the question of whether the offense was inspired by McDermott based on how the defense was designed or how the defense actually played. Jimmy Jam again, I've never been a fan of Brady. Okay, I got that one here. I think that was repeated. Black Cloud is with us. What was even the point of firing McDermott when you could have kept him, moved him to defensive head coach or a coordinator, and Brady to head coach? Now it makes sense why Brady turned down the head coaching jobs last year elsewhere. This was Bean's plan all along. See, I'm getting good. I see when you're continuing your comments. And that's possible. Brady also might not have thought he was ready. I think there's enough disaster stories with first-time head coaches starting with new teams. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see how this starts off and keeps going. Jacob Spears is going to scream on his pillow. That's a reaction. So basically nothing changes. Maybe we could throw the receiver screens to secure for lost yardage. Oh boy, the negativity. And again, this is where I'm formulating these thoughts as we go through here. But I think the circumstances under which McDermott was fired, how that viscerally affected how the loss to the Broncos viscerally affected Terry Pegula, what he saw in the locker room. I'll admit it was something of an emotional response. And it's like, never fire a coach when you're pissed or never text when you're drunk. Of course, those are two emotional guideposts to stick by. But on the other hand, if there was this much vehemence and that quick to get rid of McDermott, as it was, I don't see how they could possibly be going into this thinking that, okay, we're going to be safe, we're signing up for sort of the same thing. I don't believe that's the case. I don't believe that's the case at all. This is Bean's team, not Terry's. Clearly, the master manipulator is one. In my eyes, this really isn't a good look for the Bills. Have you ever seen this before from the Bills, Ralph? In terms of coach replacement, Anthony Lynn stepped in for Rex Ryan, right? When he got let go towards the end of the season. You could go ahead and think that. And it's going to be the difficult part about this. It's going to be tough to argue a lot of these points until we see the results. Because both outcomes, both extremes could be absolutely true. You could argue your way to both outcomes being absolutely true. Both the Bills end up looking the same, but a little bit worse, or a lot worse, maybe going 500. Or they charge off and win the AFC and stomp through the Super Bowl. Both extremes are possible. Smash the like button, y'all. Thank you, Black Cloud, for that. And of course, if you are new here, I don't see too many new faces yet, but certainly hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and I'll be coming out with a recorded video on this subject matter. But again, I wanted to kind of talk it out with you guys ahead of time. Comedian Mo Brown is with us. Good hire. Okay. I'm not disagreeing with that. And I guess I'll say now that I will adjudge this hire, Mo's liking it. I will adjudge this hire based on the selection of coordinators. I don't think I've ever been so anxious to hear about the selection of coordinators for this team. And one really interesting question is if Brady, and I have the thought that the answer to this is yes, is Brady going to be able to relinquish the play calling, step up and be the head coach of this team to where the team is actually taking on your personality, your approach? I mean, he seems to have a bit more of a heartbeat than McDermott in terms of how we've seen him. And we've not seen him on the sideline is the thing. I don't know if McDermott even allowed the coordinators on the sideline. You've heard me say this already. I'm actually not minding it. No, I didn't get the wow thing. And I've been looking for this. Adam Schefter felt that all of these hires would be done by tomorrow. And this one is certainly. The Bills were not going to wait for Clint Kubiak. Brady's a young hire for a head coach, but his familiarity in being on the team and his connection with Josh, which I think is good, I think really helps. I'm hoping, though, again, that he can move himself into the head coaching realm, have overall calls on what's going on with offense, of course, but maybe get one of these guys as your offensive coordinator, one for whom it's not a lateral move. But the selection of D coordinator is, to me, is huge. What's that going to be? Well, thank you for that, Black Cloud. I knew that someone would get the Brady Bunch reference, and that's the way we became the Brady Bunch. Go watch it if you're not familiar. It's an awful show. Obviously, McDermott made the boss really mad. Torrey, yes, I would say that is correct. I mean, and Terry in the press conference, for all of these people out with their clickbait freaking videos talking about the disaster press conference and the Bills are a mess and what's going on in the front office. We're all emotionally involved with this team, and we don't get paid shit to do that. These guys own the team, run the team, are getting paid plenty to do that. So they've got to be as emotionally deep in this as we are. This was very upsetting to them. The loss was upsetting. Firing McDermott was upsetting. I don't think their press conference was a disaster. It was real. It was honest. The point about Keon Coleman being a coach's pick rather than Beans, I believe that. I mean, Pagula's not going to just lie. like that. I mean, he did, no. That was absolutely true, just from the way he said it. So the fact that we knew that was the case, and that we knew how much Sean McDermott had his fingerprints over all the different aspects of this organization. That's really the question. How far and wide do McDermott's fingerprints spread over this organization? And I think we'll see that when he's no longer here. There's no way to tell right now. There's no OTAs. There'll be an introductory press conference. There'll be some of the questions like you guys are asking. But you could tell Terry was very fed up. Brandon Beane was upset about this. It was difficult. It wasn't easy for them, I'm sure. Yeah, the Beatles broke up after 9 years also, like I said in my last vid. But it doesn't mean they liked it. Maybe Brady will bring back Daboll and have him run the offense. Daboll and Allen were a vibe. And you know what? This actually speaks exactly to what I'm talking about with the coordinator selections. I actually wouldn't mind that Daboll would come in and be the coordinator. And I'm not so sure that's not exactly what's planned. And the one thing I like about it is that Daboll coming in as an OC after having bombed out as the head coach with the Giants, he might end up deciding that he's one of these guys that, well, God made me to be an OC, not a head coach. That way he would not get lost with it. And if he could come in and work for Brady, and I could see that. That would be very interesting. That's why the coordinators make a huge, huge difference in what we're talking about here. McDermott offense done. People don't forget it was his offense. Well, he was the head coach. Check that box. Because people will argue with you, Tori. Well, what do you mean? He was the defensive guy. It was Brady calling the shots on that. No, I don't think so. As much as we saw and are seeing evidence of McDermott's fingerprints all over this organization, with stories that are coming out now, with stuff that we know, that we've heard in the past, that we've seen, the rigidity, the tightness, what you and I have all seen with him on the sideline. Never speaks to anybody, has a quiet conversation with a ref once in a while. Otherwise, he's never looking anybody in the eye, always on that headset with the mouthpiece. And it was the same headset all season long. And how do I know that? Because he never took it, threw it to the ground, and busted it with any kind of emotion like you see from other head coaches. Brady, I think, is different in this regard. I think Brady comes into this with a far more confidence. I think one of the things that held the Bills back was McDermott came into this, wanted to get it right, I say again, and going overboard to try to do that. And then when it actually works and he makes it into the playoffs in the first season, he just keeps that up. And that built into this monster sort of the process. And the process had to be hard because you heard it. It's hard to win in the NFL. That's what you heard from him all the time. You have to earn the right to win. Yes, it is hard to win in the NFL. Yes, you have to earn the right to win. But making those your first statement mantras, you got to be a little looser. Have a little bit of confidence. I like the Daboll idea also because he'll get in Josh's grill, and Josh needs somebody to get in his grill during games. During the week, too, I'm sure, for that matter. Michael Giordano 777 is with us. Brady's a simple-minded, low IQ coach and not a leader of men. His play calling was atrocious during the Denver game. This was a huge mistake. All opinions are welcome here. I don't think that's the case. I don't believe that the Bills went into this with an easy button idea. Oh, this makes sense. Let's do this. This is the simplest. Unless they thought so lowly of McDermott that just about anybody could walk in there and get this right. We don't know. We don't know. That's what makes for difficulty being a Bills fan here and thinking about this. Makes it great that, I could get now, 44 of you sitting here with us having this discussion on about an hour's notice of going live on this. It's a big thing for everyone. But if that's that's an opinion. That's an opinion. Woke's joke, the decision is like shitting your pants and changing your socks. That is funny. Losing to Miami was a kick in the nads. Yes, it was. And Atlanta also. But when we talk about losing to Miami or losing to Atlanta, being kicks in the nads like we talked about, one thing we have to remember is the fact that the reason we got kicked in the nads by Miami, and then in other cases too, is because we weren't able to stop teams. We could not get stops. In fact, even in the earlier wins, we didn't have to get stops. In 2 wins in a row, we had roughing the punter calls that gave the Bills a first down. I think we have to realize that in looking at how much the Bills' defense has let the team down, it's not only just the failure mode in the playoffs. I mean, this was Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos, and the Bills led the game 27-23. You got to make a stop. You got to make a stop. T-Jab is with us. It was absolutely the right decision. Joe Brady delivered Super Bowl MVP play calling. Be honest, or at least try to be honest. Josh Allen, James Cook, and company failed to execute on the field. And in dissecting that comment in my mind here, it's especially the part about Josh Allen, James Cook, and company failed to execute on the field. I still believe that the imprint of McDermott on this team is far wider and deeper than we know. How could it not be? How could it not be? Again, this dynamic is so important to understand. He comes in as a first-time head coach. He's already been fired before from some other positions out of Philadelphia, as we know, when Andy Reid was there. He comes into the Bills, 17-year playoff drought, a real mountain to climb. And he's also thinking, well, I got a head coach job, but it's not like I got to be head coach of the Giants because somebody great retired. This is probably one of the least desirable jobs in the league with the Bills when McDermott took it. A team that was just the utter definition of mediocre. So he comes into it thinking, oh, I just got in to a head coaching job. at the bottom of the rung of those jobs. I've got to try to do great with this team. I developed this process, the process, trust the process, all of that. I developed this, which is so stringent, and I got to keep to that because I went out and got in the playoffs the very first time using it. And then got into these seasons after getting Josh Allen, kept on making the playoffs and thinking that, oh, it's the process that's making this happen. But it wasn't, Sean. It was the quarterback halo shining on your bald dome. I can say that. I used to shave my head. That was the quarterback halo of Josh Allen. And for people that want to say McDermott was great, that's all right. Where's the same people saying Belichick was great after Brady was gone? It made a difference. So don't tell me that McDermott was so great. But I believe that this process thing did grow into this monster that was like a weight on this team. I might be full of shit. Who knows? But we'll find out. Because we'll find out with the attitude and the look of this team. I'll tell you one thing. I think you're going to see more young guys playing because I think it's going to be a situation where it's going to be a far less complex defense. Boy, I tell you what, the coordinator watch on this is going to be just as interesting as the watch on the head coach. Dayball is taking the Tennessee job. Davis Webb for OC is the only reason I see Josh going along with this. Woke is joke. Is that actually official? I thought somebody else was penciled in for that Tennessee job. The Bills will win the Super Bowl. JP, welcome in, and thank you for that ray of light amidst the gloom and doom. It's that simple. 5 fumbles, missed throws, and soft defense all contributed to our losses. Joe Brady delivered at all times. Well, the opportunities were certainly there. And I think as the offensive coordinator, he's running it in a technical sense. But in terms of the actual persona, I think the persona is created by the head coach. And I think McDermott was very, very controlling. I think he was super controlling to try to make sure that not an iota of that process was moved out of place. And the continuing trips to the playoffs kept on reinforcing that the process was right. Don't jar a bit of it. I really don't see McDermott just telling Brady this past season, yeah, just go ahead and put together what you want. He had to be on top of it. And then he has to throw Brady under the bus with the cute comment. I think that was the Patriots' loss. So I think the persona of the team is it's from the head coach. And there were definitely things that we could see that this previous head coach, McDermott, was kind of responsible. This fear of playing younger players, that drives me nuts. I see so many teams with these young guys that are doing great because they have, they have not been forced to go learn quantum mechanics 101 to be a football player. Yes, the professional game is far more complex. However, once again, just overdoing it to the max, perhaps, was McDermott trying to maintain that process to where we know now that it was a very difficult defense to learn. I mean, we look back and I'm sure there were comments to Brandon Beane, oh, you should have taken Cooper DeJean, not Cole Bishop. Because Cooper DeJean was great. Cooper DeJean got an interception in the Super Bowl. I think Cole Bishop could be a better player. Cole Bishop had to go through and learn this McDermott defense and get so deep into it before you could actually get to the point where you could just react. And that might have still been tough. Get ready for more tush push and screen passes. Jive Ass Turkey is with us. Well, of course, without McDermott there as head coach, there's no more excuse to not run the tush push, although they ran it anyway, even though McDermott called the play dangerous. And you're talking, I think you're probably being somewhat facetious about the screen passes, Jive, in terms of, the bubble screens to Shakir and so forth. I'm talking a real screen game, though, is something the Bills have not had. And I don't call those bubble screens screen passes. That's just trying to catch a defense laterally out of place. We're talking about proper screen passes. You're drawing in defenders and putting the ball over the top of them with some dudes out in front of the ball carrier. T-Jab, his play calling contributed 5 turnovers against the Broncos. I think execution is what creates the 5 turnovers. Even the idea to try to move the ball with 22 seconds left in the first half that resulted in the fumble rather than the kneel down. I mean, McDermott indicated that was his call to give it a try. And why do I know that? Well, because if it had been on Joe Brady, he would have used a cute term or something like that, like he's been known to do before. So, no, I don't think the play calling, maybe around the half, but in terms of turnovers, there's only really one turnover to talk about. And that's James Cook putting the ball on the ground when the Bills were trying to head in to make it 14-3. I mean, think of other professions. I mean, you're a doctor and you're operating on someone. You don't pull the oxygen off the patient. Or let's say you're flying a jet. You don't decide to drink a half a bottle of liquor and then push the yolk all the way forward and put it into a smoking goal. There are certain things you just don't do. They cannot happen. They cannot happen. And that was one. Holding on to the football is prime. In fact, what is it? Oh, what's that word? Oh, fundamental. It's a fundamental. But how many times do we hear McDermott in a post-game press conference or even those silly-ass halftime interviews where they're bothering the coach for some speak? Now they're even doing it, between quarters? But how many times have we heard McDermott say, well, what are you telling your team? Well, we just got to focus on the fundamental. These guys are professional football players. How long does it take to get the fundamentals straightened out? How long does that take? That's a new word I just invented. How long does it take to get fundamentals straight? How long does it before, did they take duct tape and tape the ball to him? What was that, like the kid in Friday Night Lights? That fumble cannot happen. How many times have you been to elimination games? I think McDermott, he figured out how to be a coach, but he never really would because he was spending all his time on trusting the process. Jimmy Jam, seems like the owner and GM are cheapskates. They don't go after big-name players or a big-name coach. Always being thrifty, and it shows in our roster talent level. I don't get this comment at all, Jimmy Jam. There's a salary cap, so you can't just go spending money on players. And you know the biggest problem with the salary cap is wearing number 8 for the fucking Patriots a week from Sunday. That's the biggest problem with the salary cap. That one element makes it bad rather than reasonable. And again, why is it like that? Because Diggs just worked his way out of there. And why was Diggs able to work his way out of there? It's the answer to that question is also the answer to the question of why did Sean McDermott sit and be going public talking about Diggs in the OTAs? If you recall, this was last season. It's the same thing with McDermott going public about disciplining Keon Coleman. Sticking to the process. Think, McDermott, think. Don't make this stuff public. And you're telling me that you can't sit down and get this thing straight between people? He apparently could not. So the owner and the GM are not cheapskates, I believe. I believe the now fired head coach was largely responsible for allowing the Stephon Diggs situation to fester, which ended up getting him out of there within the Bills looking at a huge cap hit. And then, yeah, certainly the Bills were great throwing the ball last season. But you needed Diggs. You needed to make that work. You needed to make that work, Sean. I'm sorry I'm taking exception with this comment because I'm not done yet. Seems like the owner and GM are cheapskates. They don't go after big name players or a big name coach. Now, in terms of going after a big name coach, I mean, coaches' salaries are not under the salary cap. I seriously don't think the amount of money they were willing to spend on a coach figured into the decision to hire Joe Brady. I mean, if Terry Pagula is going to go and see what he saw in that locker room and see what he saw of Josh and be that upset at a press conference, I've never seen the man as upset as he was at that press conference. This is the guy that just has spent $3 billion of his own money on this stadium that cost 2.26. And he's going to cheap out on a head coach? Nah, come on. And the being thrifty, now I don't agree with that. He's not thrifty, and it's showing in the roster talent level. You know, we could talk about talent a lot in the NFL, but we often talk about it in terms of like it's 3 piles of stones. One pile is about 3 inches high, another is like 4 feet high, and another is like 80 feet high. And we'll call those 3 piles of stones the talent levels on 3 different teams: really low, medium, and high. It's not that different. It is not that different. It's not that different. It's more like 3 inches, 3 3/8, and then 3.5. The talent levels amongst the teams, amongst the players, don't vary that awful widely. I talked to a former coach earlier this season that was talking about how that was hearing the comments of how bad the Bills receivers were, and he said, "No, it's not talent. It's the way things are being done. If you want to worry about something, don't worry about this stuff. Worry about how much of the Bills' propensity to run on first down, the Bills wanting to be a run-first team when you have got Josh Allen. Worry about how much of that was Joe Brady and how much of that was Sean McDermott. That's what I'm worried about. Pardon me. They fired McDermott because he criticized the roster, but I bet they go after a wide receiver. Well, I think there was more to it than that. But I'll tell you one thing I do believe, and I've mentioned this on a number of shows already. I believe that Sean McDermott really, really wanted Jalen Waddle. But I think Bean, who's had some draft picks wrestled from him a bit, it sounds like Bean, who has been accused of making bad picks when sometimes it might have been coaching that either influenced the pick or even Kyer Elam. I mean, we'll never know. He kind of got ruined in Buffalo. I mean, how decent could he have been before his confidence got shattered? By Mr. Rigid. But I do believe that Brandon Bean, when McDermott was insisting perhaps on them going and getting Jalen Waddle from the Dolphins, and Bean was willing to part with the 2027 first-round pick, but not the 2026. That was what happened. And I think Bean said, I'm not giving up this pick to save your job. Now, who knows how it would have turned out with that. Yeah, they need to probably trade for a wide receiver, unless I don't know how high they can get to get someone that's a superstar in the draft. I tell you what, I'd like to see him. I don't know when he comes out, but Becker from Indiana. Oof. Moving on. I can go back to every game and specifically highlight individual plays on both sides that cost us victories. At no time did I see Joe Brady fail our team. I'll believe that. Well, good joke. Brady had nothing to do with the turnovers in the Denver game. Allen hits the two wide receivers in stride instead of hang the ball in the air, and those two are walk-on touchdowns. And he held the ball like a loaf of bread before halftime. I'm seeing the rest of that comment. And fumbled. Yeah, absolutely. And boy, I hope Dayball is the offensive coordinator. Got a funny feeling on that one. We should be in the Super Bowl right now, and everyone knows that. We need to help our quarterback from further regression and improve the quality of players on our team. The team just needs to be led by a dude. I mean, you look at different head coaches and you just get a feel for them and how their personality kind of imprints onto a team. Mike Vrabel, Liam Cohen, he was going to go Dukes with coach from that other team, I forget it was, earlier in the season. You guys remember it. And Ben Johnson, dissing Matt LaFleur with the handshake. And then his F the Packers rant in the locker room. I mean, there's attitude, and we need some attitude. I think there was a serious lack of attitude on the Bills' sideline. And that's all McDermott, I believe. I find it difficult to believe that both coordinators wanted to be upstairs. Joe Brady was, because a lot of coordinators actually are on the offensive side. A lot of defensive coordinators are on the sideline, but I think Bobby Babich wasn't that, so that's why he was hiding up in the booth. Now, what the hell happens if Babich becomes the DC? That's another show. Josh needs a better quarterback coach and a number one receiver, preferably two. The defense needs more stout players capable of lasting throughout the season. Well, you've got to stop. This is the other thing with McDermott's defense. That is, it's very complex, and it was great when you had Hyde and Poyer back there that just knew this inside out. It's like a band that plays the very hardest songs, and they knew the songs. And when you could do that, that's great. And it was this defense that wanted to prevent you from getting over the top of it. It was like a nagging defense. It was never like super aggressive. And it was difficult, so you didn't see a lot of young players out on the field. And the other thing that defense called for and required were these lighter, fleeter linebackers. Your sideline to sideline kind of linebacker that can cover, which move teams away from more of that thumper sort of linebacker. I mean, pick a name. Ray Nitsky, that was one. Mike Singletary, there was another. Shaq Thompson is kind of that. He's more of a thumper linebacker. But you need some studs. You just need more and larger, nastier dudes in the front seven. Terrell Bernard is a glorified safety. Dorian Williams, he a little bigger, but I think again Dorian Williams has suffered from the over complex McDermott defense. Again, somebody else not being able to get on the field. And then when they do get on the field early on, they're confused as hell. Look at how confused that defense was in that Chicago preseason game where Ben Johnson was just out there with Caleb Williams and taking them apart. And then they brought out, Tyson Bagent, their backup quarterback, and he just picked up where Caleb Williams left off. The Bills were just lost in the secondary. Oh, we've got such bad players in the secondary. No. The defense is too complex. It's overcomplicated. Again, evolved into this monster because if it's not this, we're not going to make the playoffs. And this is what I'm getting to on a theme of this whole thing is that McDermott, I think, had a big imprint on this team that was born of a lot of lack of confidence that was made up for by making sure you adhere to this crazy process you invented for yourself to have your hand on every detail across the team. Thanks, T-Jab. Donald Ohina is with us. Not happy with them elevating Brady to head coach. How many times did the offense do nothing in the first half? Thought his play calling was way too predictable. No one can argue with that. It's just, I guess, what it's going to end up becoming. And again, it goes back to the same thing. How much of an imprint did McDermott have? Now, look, you could argue this thing any way you want. I mean, Joe Brady, on the other hand, could have, told them exactly what they wanted to hear in every single answer. And of course, had the most familiarity with what happened to the Bills during the course of the season. You could argue that, but I just don't think that's the case. These people are too dedicated to the jobs they do to screw around with that kind of crap. So again, I think it's not only of Brady going to the head coaching spot, but what they're going to do for offensive coordinator, pass game coordinator, whatever it may be. And of course, now with Chrome gone, Aaron Cromer retired. You may have seen some of this coming. Hard to say. It makes this difficult because there are easy things to say that make it look really bad that they hired Brady. But you just got to believe one way or the other. Fair take, but regardless, Brady called the plays, and he takes a portion of the blame, in my opinion. Yeah, it's tough to say. Too many injuries. Houston, we have a problem. This upcoming draft will be pivotal. Go Bills. And that's another thing with the injuries. Why? Why are there so many injuries on the team? I mean, we there's injuries everywhere in the NFL for sure, but I don't know that anybody has actually done on the injuries. But it seems to be that with the we had the defensive line stuff is that throws my whole argument out. The bigger, tougher guys not getting hurt as much, but Ed Oliver, Landon Jackson, Michael Hoyt, basically, three of them contributed very, very little collectively to the Bills. But then, there's Bernard always hurt. I don't know. I don't have the answer to it. And is there something else that was to do with McDermott? Hell, this team might just be like people have talked about, cursed. It won't matter who in the hell is in the spot. We just don't know. That's what makes this so fascinating a subject. Filthy Dollar Bills is with us here. What a dog and pony show. I was hoping for change. Then why fire McD? Well, that's what we've been talking about here. I guess the logic you have to go through is that Pagula and Bean are very focused on what this situation is. If they didn't give a crap and just wanted to keep on trying for Super Bowls, they could keep McDermott for another 9 years and fill the seats and get halfway through the playoffs and be out. People would be upset after a while. They'd be calling for McDermott's firing in the stands with large signage. After a further fashion, we saw an example with Mike Tomlin with the Steelers. But you could have kept that up and kept on filling the seats and made your money and got your PSLs, and got your season tickets and so forth and so on. So indeed, your question then why fire McD? Well, it's because they didn't want it to continue like this, that they really want to win the Super Bowl. The owner really wants to win a Super Bowl. I don't think Terry is a money-grubbing guy. I think this is important to him. His wife has the health issues, which I think is put a huge dent in his life. Yes, he's got a lot of money. Yes, he's getting a big yacht. You know what? Everybody gets used to everything they have, and we all still have problems. And that's got to be tough. And, is one thing he wants to really have happen, or is a tribute to her, or whatever it may be. There's probably a litany of reasons all woven into how he feels about this. But you could tell he was really fed up. And I believe this will be change. It's interesting that there's so many assumptions that exist that a lot of you are having these negative feelings about it. And it's because the assumptions are you got to ask yourself, where are they coming from? And if you have to ask anything about the assumptions, again, we go back to the very, very core of this. How much of an imprint on this team was Sean McDermott making? And with that imprint gone, you might be able to assess how different things actually could be. This might be very, very different. I think there's a chance it is, because I think Brady's a completely different type of personality than McDermott. But thanks for the comment. Filthy dollar bills. That's a great handle. Focus Joe Brady called a hell of a game. His blame should be minimal, if at all. McDermott admitted he made the call to get aggressive before halftime. That wasn't a Brady call. That is true. That's what we heard. Black Cloud. Ralph, with our cap issues, who do you target in the draft? Do you go after wide receivers mainly, trade up to get a solid wide receiver, or go elsewhere in the draft at a different position? What say you? I believe you're going after. You might be drafting a linebacker with your first pick. We need that level of the defense needs some nastiness. The only form of nastiness that level had this season was with Shaq Thompson. Milano was great at times, but again, a lot of these guys are kind of played. They were still playing on the field because the defense is complex. That's why you couldn't get some stud off your practice squad to step in the playoffs, and you had to call A.J. Klein instead. A.J. Klein off the couch, planning his vacation with his family because he knows the songs. You know, I mean, it's the same thing with the other linebacker they brought back this season. I'm getting myself pissed here. I can't even remember the name. As far as a wide receiver goes, I'm not about A.J. Brown. I think that's a little bit of a mental issue there. And I've heard DeAndre Hopkins talking, said, well, yeah, where the hell were you a couple of years ago when the Bills were looking for you? I think that Brady is going to want one of his LSU guys. And I think that's going to be Justin Jefferson. It'll be interesting because J.J. McCarthy does not look like he's going to work out as a quarterback of the Vikings. How do the Vikings feel with Sam Darnold headed to the Super Bowl after they declined to work with him? Reacted too quickly. But I think Justin Jefferson would be interesting because if they're looking for a pick, Minnesota, that is, if they want to try to move up, there's not a lot to move up for in terms of quarterback, though, this time around. We'll see. The Senior Bowl is this week, so maybe things are developing. That's why Bean had to get this done also. He's off to the Senior Bowl now, avoiding reporters as much as possible, I'm sure. But I think that you try to trade for a number one guy. And I think in the draft, you know, again, yeah, draft a wide receiver if there is one. I'd get a couple. But the team needs a stud linebacker. I'm figuring you're going to have some of the guys who were hurt last season will be returning to the defensive line. I think the defensive line could be pretty good. And who knows? Maybe they make Ryan Nielsen defensive coordinator. It's so hard to say because with the wet and icy blanket that McDermott may have been, and we don't know for sure, but there's hints to it that that was the case. So for the wet and icy blanket that McDermott may have been over the organization, once that's off, we might see things we didn't really expect at all. I'm not sure. I appreciate your take as always, but after 2 or 3 turnovers, you have to call plays that create space to help avoid interceptions. Well, I mean, I suppose so. I mean, you need to kind of do that all the time anyway. Pegula sucks as an owner. It's Pegula, by the way. And I don't know. That feels like an emotional response to me. Brady's offensive play calling elevated our quarterback to an MVP status and a rushing crown victor. He did that all without a number one wide receiver. The facts are the facts. So this is good conversation we've got going here. And coming back, welcome to Joke. I also appreciate your takes as well. I just think Allen was really bad at a bad time to be bad in the Denver game. Yeah, exactly. But again, nobody ever did anything about the deer in the headlights. Look, I mean, I don't think Joe Brady's going to let that persist. I don't think it's just going to be guys walking up to Josh Allen on the sideline after an offensive series that failed and just speaking to him in these quiet tones. I mean, give me Dable as OC. He called the offense and we got nowhere. Dumbest hire ever. Screen pass Joe. Here we go. These are getting good. Drew Blackout. I'm just hoping for something more exciting next year. How many bubble screens will they continue to call? It's boring. I suppose a true number one receiver will help. Well, it will. I mean, if you can threaten, deep quarters to deep middle, you're taking men down there. I mean, it's sure it's going to help. That was last year. What happened this year? Allen didn't have an MVP caliber season. He was in the runs and in the running for the voting. Him to be mentioned for MVP this year is laughable, in my opinion, anyways. Yeah. All right. The entire NFL fan base is laughing at us. I don't know. I think Brady was probably hit a lot of other interviews. I mean, somebody probably was going to snag him. And then you guys would have been so sorry when he gets with his new team and starts doing great. Smart move. Mo is back with us. Super excited to have Joe Brady at the helm. McDermott has too many swings at the plate. It's time to let someone else take a swing. Indeed, Wokazoka. I guess we shall see when the first game starts. Going to be interesting to see who Joe brings here to run the offense, or rather who Bean wants here, and the players they go after. Please draft a number one wide receiver. Oh, they might. I wish there were more quarterbacks this draft, because the more great quarterbacks at the top of the draft are more picks that are consumed by quarterback needy teams, and then you don't get to the great other players as soon as you do. Honestly, I'm most concerned about the health of the team. Seems we lost multiple players per game for extended periods. Hopefully this is not lost on Brady. Well, I'm sure every single piece of it, up the irons, welcome in also. I'm sure every piece of this has been discussed. And there may be some things they've already identified that were in place that were causing some problems. I'm not talking about on the injury front, but just about anything having to do with the team. It depends, again, on what the depth of McDermott's imprint was on this organization, which I fear was pretty deep because he appeared to be the guy, the CEO. It never appeared as though he was working for Brandon Beane. And I don't think Brandon Beane wants a coach working for him. That's not what it's about. I think they want to be of the same mind, but I think he does want a CEO of football, which would be probably above the president of football operations. I don't know. You could make your argument on a organization chart about that. But yeah, definitely the health. This move is almost as bad as wide right. And McDermott gets credit for building the culture, but it's time for a new era in town. Well, I mean, he did build the culture. He created a better environment simply because they were winning and getting into playoffs year after year. I don't know. There maybe couldn't possibly be a better culture from that standpoint, but I tend to think still that the team, especially in the biggest moments, sort of embodied what he was. And he seems to be rigid. It doesn't seem to be, I don't know. I listened to a lot of McDermott pressers and so forth, and I would like somebody who's a little less measured all the time. I want some attitude. I want some fire. Brady's now responsible for coaching one of the greatest talents of our lifetime in his prime. Tons of pressure. Well, hopefully he gets himself some help in terms of what they do on offensive coordinator. I'm very concerned with hearing that. Bean gets his puppet at coach, par for the course. Okay. I actually don't mind. Biggest tell will be the DC hire. We cannot afford to whiff on that. That's for damn sure. I think somebody had the fantasy of waiting and getting the DC and OC from Seattle and bringing them here. Now, Terry could shell out the money for that if they'll come. Of course, that's Clint Kubiak and Dirty, right? They're the defensive coordinator. T.T. Tromler is here. Yeah, I like the inventive handles in order to get away from the numbers that they add. Now, the one I have at 716, well, that's the area code around Buffalo, so that was on purpose. But T.T. Tromler, with Brady as OC, we had the best offense the last 2 years. Our problem was D that had to correct so often in halftime. Good decision. We get a comparable good DC. Yeah. With us, Bumpers in the Ralph. All right. If you guys got here a little bit late, we couldn't possibly have been talking this long. Oh my good, Nor. Are you kidding me? It's almost been 90 minutes. It seems like a half a freaking hour. This is a topic. Welcome in. Welcome in. More I think about it, the more I want to get the rest of your comment up the irons when it gets in here. Too bad Schwartz will probably be staying in Cleveland. I loved his defense. Yeah, will he? Will he? I don't know. I love Schwartz. DC. All day. Seems like rearranging of the chairs on the Titanic if most of the coaching staff is retained. Well, I wouldn't call it the Titanic. You know, maybe a stalled Greyhound bus in the middle of I-40 in Wyoming, but not the Titanic. Now I wonder who Brady picks for OC and DC. Don't even want to know. What a joke. Oh, boy. gloom and doom. It's high time for that in Bills country, I guess, again. McDermott, his rigid tightness year after year, defensive failures year after year, no connection with the quarterback, bad coaching decision costing playoff games, defense getting worse, no accountability. Blues Bender, I tend to agree with that. I think Tyler Dunn wrote the McDermott problem 2 years ago, over 2 years ago. I doubt we get run over every game with a new D coordinator. Well, yeah, and I hope the Brady. That's the other thing that's of importance, of course, with the head coach selection. If it was going to be someone that didn't have previous head coaching experience, is at least to have had league experience where you know people, and I think the Bills is an attractive place to come. For a DC, it could be very interesting. First time head coach plus little change, maybe 5 to 7 years of Allen left. Could be a disaster, really. Hey, Schlegs, welcome in. Yeah, I'm sure they were considering that in these meetings. It's large. It's large, and it could be. Everyone loves what McDermott created, and we thank him. Outcomes matter. 9 years is more than plenty of time to see patterns. It's time for a different perspective on how things are run. Brady. And look, again, we go back to what I said early on in the show about the indictments. I mean, it is an indictment of Sean McDermott having lost some of the games that were lost this season. It was an indictment giving up the division to the Patriots with a first-time head coach and a second-year quarterback. And the ultimate slap is that they are going to the Super Bowl now. And truthfully, Buffalo should have beaten them. James Cook doesn't put that ball on the ground. The Bills beat Denver. And who knows if Bo Nix breaks his ankle, but Buffalo not only hands the division to the Patriots, and not only loses to Denver so that the Patriots can go play there, but leave the nice little door prize of Bo Nix's broken ankle. I mean, the Patriots are skating through this. They might continue in the Super Bowl, although I think it's going to be kind of tough for them against Seattle. Here's the real question I want people to think about. Do we continue making the playoff streak, keeping the playoff streak alive with Brady as head coach next season? As of right now, sadly, I say no. I think they'll go 8-9. Well, you'd have to have some reasons for that either way. I mean, this is speculation. And I think the biggest issue most people have today that it was an in-house hire. There'd be all sorts of new, enticing, sparkling wonder about someone else coming in. Although, if it had been Dayball, it would have been the same stuff. Or we just came from screwing up the Giants. If it had been one of these other guys, they're young and not much older than Josh himself. What the hell is that? There's going to be complaints on whatever they did. I'd have hired a ham sandwich over Brady. Yeah, I think you had the ham sandwich comment the other day, didn't you? Black Cloud, I believe it was you. They're just going to hire from within for the OC and keep Babbage for DC. Can't see it being much different than what we have seen. Well, that's going to be a real commentary there. And I tend to think that it will not be Babbage as the defensive coordinator. He's been a disciple of McDermott's for years. And one of the stated reasons for having McDermott out of there was the categorical disasters in defensive failures in elimination games. And there was yet another one this past weekend. Don't let him score. He had the lead. Bills had the lead. 4 minutes left. Come on. So I don't see Babich at all. And as far as the OC, no, I don't think so. I think the Bills are an attractive enough team that something told me the other day. I was actually thinking about this. It's not illegal, certainly not against the law, to be sitting in an interview and asking some of these guys, if we don't go this way, how do you feel about coming here as the OC or the DC? I tend to wonder. What if they get Anthony Weaver as the defensive coordinator? That'd be interesting. But I have a feeling that there was some discussion with some of these candidates about their temperature for coming in as a coordinator if they weren't selected as the head coach. So I don't think I'm Babich. If they keep Babich, then the defense is going to get cooked, in my opinion. Now, again, for my reasons, a disciple of McDermott's, and with that being a stated reason that they had playoff exits, there's no way Babich is going to be the DC. I don't think he'll be kept, perhaps, unless they, I don't know. You got to get rid of the tiny linebackers he's been coaching. So keeping Brady is cheaper than firing McDermott. I don't think this has anything to do with expenditures of money. Not when there's $1.21 billion coming out of his pocket for this stadium. I mean, paying a coach is not going to have an influence on the amount. It's not going to have an influence. Great show, no sugarcoating, no negativity, clear perspective analysis. Keep up the great work. Thank you, T-Jab. Keeping it up here. Sabre, 17 years, no playoffs. Josh Allen, 9 years, no Super Bowl. You really think Pagula knows what he's doing? Well, I believe it's his job to hire people that know what they're doing. But to ask the same question, I mean, with the Sabres, has it been the case? With the Bills, it was close, but yet so far. I think, though, one of the things you have to think about the Bills, I started my last video with this, was did McDermott take the Bills as far as they could go, or did the Bills take McDermott as far as he could go? And I think it's the latter. I think McDermott the team was being held back in certain ways, not deliberately or specifically by something he was trying to do, just that was the case. Perhaps without that, they are going undefeated. Who knows? Now you can make the argument that without McDermott, somebody just did. They made the argument that they'll go 8-9. So you can go either way on that. But I do have a feeling that based on how much of an imprint that McDermott had on the team, and then with that gone, and as well as the team did previously, what could be the possibility? And that entirely depends a lot on Joe Brady, who is not a disciple of Sean McDermott in any way, shape, or form. He was basically a convenient option in the middle of a season where you had to do something like that when they fired Dorsey. Remember early in the season when Babich was calling the plays and defense was getting torched? That's what you have to look forward to. Yeah, the Babich is not going to be the DC. Love it. As do I. Schlegs. McDermott took over the defense this season, from what I was to understand. No, he did. That is the case. McDermott started calling plays, and then the he got some guys playing well, but we need the youngsters to make more of an impact on this team, especially defensively. And you cannot do that when it is so difficult for them to understand what they're supposed to be doing. Webb will be the offensive coordinator. We'll find a competent DC better than Babbage, and then we will make it. We're so close, and Brady has a solid basement. I like this comment. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Webb would be great. Webb would be awesome. Well, is Webb currently an OC, or is he a pass game coordinator? I'm just worried about guys making lateral moves. They just better not go with Babbage for DC. His defense was lacking key situations. 3rd and 10 should be a gimme for the opposition. Under Babbage, I was always worried. Yeah, exactly. And even then, you could say, well, how much of it was a McDermott imprint on the defense? But the problem with that argument, which works great for on the Brady side, is not good because Babbage has been a disciple. I mean, an absolute altar boy for McDermott for a long time. Slags. Yeah, McDermott took it over in the early season because Babbage was getting torched and it did not look good. No, it did not. I agree with you about their press conference. Would rather see honesty than some sugar-coated, pre-scripted crap. Yeah, and all the people that are out there complaining about it being a disaster, those are just these clickbait bottom feeders that are, gathering this, this was a disaster. Why? Why was it a disaster? Why? Explain, Lucy. Why was it a disaster? I think some shit came out. It's when you've got this corporate window dressing on stuff that keeps real feelings out of it. That's what's damaging, not this, when you get some honesty out there. Local evening news is with us. Timeline, January 23rd, 2022, 13 seconds game. February 4th, 2022, Joe Brady hired quarterback coach. February 6th, 2025, MVP 17. January 27th, 26, former Penn State grad assistant named CEO Joe. Only 4 years and 13 seconds too late. That one deserves a star. Well done. Daboll already went to Titans. I thought Titans were going with someone else. And Davis Mills wouldn't bother me. And Shieldhouse from the Rams is interesting. Also, as an OC under Brady, he's another one of those minds. And when they interviewed those guys, they interviewed a lot of candidates. Did the Bills, and I think they interviewed far more than many other teams. And I believe they were interviewing guys in terms of coordinator positions also. Because I don't think they're going to bring in some 30-year-old guy Brady's young himself, but Brady has been with the Bills. I mean, somebody coming from outside without the feel of this team and knowing the hierarchy of it would have been tough. So you ask yourself, well, why were the Bills then interviewing all these young offensive minds? Because one of them is going to be the coordinator of the team. That's why. All right, Daboll is now the Titans OC. Okay. So I was talking about head coach, not and that's Robert Saleh anyway. I knew that. So interesting. Okay. So Daboll was the guy to come in and shake stuff up, and they messed it up. It was the obvious choice. And I'm assuming you're talking about for the head coach. Well, if that was the case, why didn't Titans hire him as head coach rather than Saleh. Denver coach to Buffalo, defensive coordinator. Yeah, I've heard this. I've heard that talked about. When Miami Mike chose the Bolts OC job over even interviewing with the Bills, that should have told you how bad things are in the Bills front office. Why? Why would that tell me how bad things are in the Bills front office? How about more like Miami Mike once he got spotted in the car trolling Bills fans down by the Elbow Room on Fort Lauderdale Beach? Knew that at some point he's going to take a beer can upside the head being on the Bills sideline. And again, they might have been thinking OC there too. I think it was a great move. Brady always put them in a position to win. Allen just throw some game away, but to win, Allen just threw some games away. But we need a number one wide receiver to get over the hump. Yeah, you do, because it's not only what that receiver will do, but it's what that receiver will make parts of the defense do. That's the whole idea with the number one wide receiver, is that it draws attention. If you're not drawing attention, it's much more difficult to do other things. And the fact, without a number one wide receiver, the Bills managed to have the rushing crown, both individually with James Cook, as well as a team. They were number one. That's remarkable. Without that number one receiver that pulls defenders down the field with him. Joe Brady's 36. That's young enough for a head coach. Absolutely. Maybe in being so young will make the players relate to him more instead of having an older coach who feels like a father. And, yeah, McDermott also, and no one's mentioned this, and it's probably why you're only hear it here on the Ralph Rant, but McDermott's a smaller dude. And I just think that physical size, obviously in the football field, it plays a part. But when you're talking about leading men and having sway or being whatever you want to call it, I mean, Mike Vrabel strikes you much more like that than Sean McDermott. So McDaniel knew he had no shot. I think that's probably true also. If they go 6-10 next year, then you're firing Brady and hiring somebody else. See, wasn't that easy? The players' lack of execution lost to the Broncos. Brady delivered a victory on a silver platter. And did that without Ty Johnson. And, whose decision was it to have Ty Johnson on the field versus the Jets to make contract bonuses? I don't know. Bills got to beef up the run defense this offseason. Yeah, absolutely. The linebackers. It's got to be. Acid Wizard, welcome in. Blues Bender. McDermott built up his ego and made things run through him. Scapegoated Leslie Frazier, special teams coach, GM, execution, also known as players. The team could feel his tightness. 13 seconds lingered. Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. First-time head coaches is a coin flip, and you don't have years to gamble with Allen aging. It's a mind-boggling choice in my mind. Well, I'm sure Belichick would have listened if they'd invited him for an interview. But I think first-time head coach is coin flip perhaps, but boy, I mean, it's demonstrated in spades. The two teams in the Super Bowl have a second-year head coach with only his first year with his quarterback, Sam Darnold. That's Mike McDonald, of course, defensive head coach of the Seahawks. And then Vrabel, defensive head coach of the Patriots, as a second-year quarterback who's gotten sacked more in the postseason. I think he might break records. And the turnovers, and they're going to the Super Bowl before the Bills. I mean, just like say that to yourself a few times or write it on a whiteboard. So I think that I'm not so worried about the first-time head coach business. And there might actually be a case of where Brady, since he's been here and has awareness of how things got thrown off the rails, if that's how he feels with McDermott, might be better informed on dealing with that than someone coming in fresh. Blame Brady for McDermott, 3rd and 14, no pressure. Yeah, exactly. He had 7 up in the line, and let's just drop 3 and play in the secondary. Yeah, I agree with that comment. Local evening news: Joe Brady's Bills go 13-3 in the inaugural campaign at the new Highmark Stadium. Coach of the year. Hopefully, it's 14-3 actually. And this season, we'll see the Bills with 9 away games rather than 9 home games. So we need to get some more use out of that stadium by getting a number 1 seed. Who knew the way to get the OC to the sideline would be to fire the head coach? Yeah, there you go. Thank you, JP, on that one. Acid Wizard says, if you regularly score 30 points and regularly lose, the defense is the problem. Yeah, indeed. Indeed. If you regularly give up late leads in playoff games, and then once it happened, in 13 seconds, it was just always going to be like that. That's a problem. Being performed a McDermott ectomy. It's the ectomy. It's McDermott ectomy. An ectomy is when you remove something like an appendectomy. It's a McDermott ectomy. And losing the divisional round again, that's why you shake shit up. Yep, that's what he was talking about with doing it again. 5 turnovers, missed thrown, open passes, and soft defense cost our victory in Denver. And I would submit that the very first turnover by James Cook was by far the worst of them, because the Bills were going to run away with that game, and just, it's like, I don't know, is McDermott's middle name Murphy? It might be. Removing McDummy. McDermott did not lose that game. Turnovers lost it. I wish we could have 1 Super Bowl with McDermott. Junie, 12:33 a.m. I suspect you are a radio host, and that is where we find you on the dial. Or maybe that's a time. Yeah, it's a wonder. It's a wonder. Acid Wizard. What Ms. Cleo knows. All right, we're getting through him here. I agree. I believe McDermott had his hands on everything and continues to fail year after year, especially his defense, which was his wheelhouse. And the way he spoke to the press, he knew the writing was on the wall. Yep. Accurate. This is exactly a trust process move, Ralph. A trust the process move. See you in 20 years. Leave my freedom be. Welcome to the channel. Seeing the new names. I remember you guys, everyone. Let's not forget the big baller Bean did nothing at the trade deadline. He wasn't going to give away another pick to try to, this time, save McDermott's job. I think there's consternation over McDermott screwing up Kaiir Elam because the defense was too hard. Bean did not like that. I think there's consternation over, they being lost the number 1 pick when they traded for Diggs. Of course, you're going to do that. That's going to cost you one, but it still cost them a pick. And then as we go down on the line, we have first-round picks that are largely defenders. And then I think Bean finally said, no, I'm not saving your job by sacrificing another first-round pick to go get Waddle, who's been in the league a few years. And, that's why there was no trade made. It wasn't because, Bean was not going to part with that pick. He was not giving up their first-round pick, especially if this writing was already on the wall, on the inside walls of one Bills drive, where, you're not going to go into the draft missing your number 1 pick because you were told to trade it away by someone who's not there any longer. From September on, I thought the entire team looked disjointed. My first thought was that they were burnt out on McD, and it checked out. To an extent, that intensity could be grinding when it's all the time. It was not McDermott that turned the Bills around. Allen sucked year 1, then Daboll came in and fine-tuned. It was Daboll that ended the drought. Don't kid yourself. Well, no. McDermott ended the drought with Tyrod Taylor before Josh got here. And which to me is a big thing, because I think McDermott, again, as I stated earlier, came in with the idea that I have to do everything like 10 to the third power in triplicate, super aggressive on all the details, just making sure of every last little thing. He made it as hard as it possibly could, because if it was any easier, he probably felt like, well, that might not succeed. I admire that. But then the great thing, the awful thing, was that he made the playoffs in that first season. And now, this process he created, it's like, this is what I have to do every time. Which might have not really been the case, but if you first, I like to cook. If the first time you make a great dish, if you go through all this exercise to get there, you feel like, well, I have to go through that same exercise to get there over and over again. And that might not be the case. Injuries and turnovers were the issue this year. Let's be real. Yeah. There are a lot more turnovers by Josh. It's a roll of the dice. Some years when you have very low injuries or turnovers, it's just by kind of chance. But there were a lot of turnovers, and the injuries are bothersome. It's how do you get Christian Benford hurt in a practice like that? How does that even happen? Or how does Ed Oliver get stepped on in practice where he was out for weeks? And then, just right to get hit to tear the bicep. I don't know. Hope it's not a curse. Maybe moving out of that stadium and into the new one will alleviate that. They signed Jim Leonard as the defensive coordinator. Really? I like that choice. Jesse McCallion, thanks for coming in. I'll have to note that there's stuff developing here as we are even doing the show. If Brady was OC, you're one of Allen, he'd have been fired long ago. Or hired. The offense wasn't that great, really. Josh Allen bailed them out a ton. It was actually painful to watch for long stretches. They led the league in rushing. I think that's a little bit strong. Allen did bail them out some, but I don't know. We'll see. If Pagula and Bean think that the result they ended up with at the end of the season was due to comments like you just stated, then either they don't understand that or they really understand it and know that making this change is going to be a change because it will be removal of McDermott's fingerprints from all of this. Walker is hopefully the rookie of the year. They did not sign Jim Leonard. He's a top candidate, according to Schefter. Okay. Thank you, Jackie Cellini, for being in here. Another new name that I haven't seen on the channel before. Again, if you're new here, guys, we're going to cut it off here in a second. We're out to 2 hours. I don't know how we got this far this fast. But so we can go catch up on the news some more. But go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you are new here. Like the video. Ralph Rant will be coming at you all off season. We'll have new stuff on the stadium. Of course, we'll be getting into the draft and the free agency periods. It's going to be very, very interesting. The process is a mature process that achieves repeatable results of playoff exits. It isn't manufacturing. You don't have enough data to create a rigid process. His Majesty, that's well put because it's statistically sound sample of X number of games. That's what makes the NFL so exciting, actually. But I think, again, that process that was created and used throughout, it was completely matured because it was resulting in very similar results each time. But it was missing some of it too. So where do you go with that? Well, you go to Brady. Keep trusting the process, guys. Cook doesn't fumble when we score a touchdown, we win that game. Yeah, absolutely. Yep, I still think the Bills might blow them out if Cook doesn't fumble on that drive. Yeah, for sure. Ogunjobi is committing a penalty that negates a turnover. It's poor preparation, poor coaching. It also happened earlier in the game around the Cook fumble. Totally agree. Yeah. It's just can't happen. Cannot happen. And that play's not talked about enough. That's for sure. Surprise. Cook fumbled again like he did a dozen times previously in the year. I think he had 6 fumbles, actually. Or jump off sides when the Broncos fumble on the first drive. Yep. We will learn from this. Thank the Lord that's over. Is that a McDermott quote? Joe Brady handed them his assistant at the Penn State University Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator that's responsible for coaching MVP 2025, league leading rusher 2026. Hired. Yeah. I just hope it was McDermott affecting the offense and not Joe Brady being a moron. Well, we've got the relationship between McDermott and Babbage to look at as mentor and disciple, but that's McDermott and Babbage. That's not McDermott and Brady. So I think Brady, I think you had a controlling head coach in Sean McDermott, and it would be ridiculous to think that Brady had a free reign there. And I don't know. I mean, you'd get the truth by talking to enough people also, which I'm sure that the Bills have done. Media guy asked Joe Brady if he was a part of the coaching staff that wanted Keon Coleman. I got to go catch these interviews up, man. I'm missing this stuff. One thing that really irked my nerves with McDermott, he sat James Cook for him fumbling a carry for the entire game, yet Kincaid fumbles as a rookie and he never sits once. Same thing with Allen, never. Was sat once for fumbling. Not cheapskates, but Bean has blown a lot of money on guys who really didn't contribute. Big money has been on Von Miller and Joey Bosa. But he won't get Josh a wide receiver 1. Come on. You're 100% right. McDermott had to make the Stephon Diggs situation work, no doubt about it. Makes 0 sense. Terry is a numbskull. I'm just reading your comments here and exchanges to each other. 35 years ago today, wide right, all fitting on Joe Brady hired day because it's wide right again. Let that sink in. Ouch. I agree. You have to help the receivers and some and run some choice routes and different things other than just the mesh concept crap. Guess we'll find out if it was Brady or McDermott. Yeah. Free agent signings: Curtis Samuel and Joshua Palmer. Not one touchdown. Yep. Jim Leonard is expected to be a leading candidate for defensive coordinator under Joe Brady. It was the first drive when McDermott's defense failed to get off the field for 7 minutes and 30 seconds, a drive which resulted in 3 points and sent the game to overtime. It was over at the beginning of the game, long before the end. Elam saved McDermott butt losing to a third-string Miami. Yeah, that's very true. Saved McDermott's butt losing to a third-string Miami quarterback with that interception in the end zone. Yep. Go look at all the free agent receiver stats they have signed with their previous teams. It was an obvious Bills offense problem. Coaches are responsible for team identity. Yes, they are. Front office better trim some money from the cap, like trading Snowman and renegotiating or cutting Knox. Maybe we can get some defensive bodies that don't have arthritis yet. McDermott let Allen sit by himself when he wigged out in the Texans playoff with the Texans playoff game and all dejected and anchors away. Admiral McDermott. That's actually funny. We need new strength and conditioning staff pronto. Yeah, they got Will I forget his last name, but yeah, my favorite show. You ask great questions. Thanks, Anna. Injuries when players are stretched thin and made to cover positions they didn't sign up for. Imagine a heavy Mercedes being dragged into a car race. Thank you, Anna. Is there a minimum term for head coach? Sign him for 5 years instead of 2 or 3. Terry has been about the proverbial playoff wall. Well, I think 5 is normal. And, it's a head coach. It doesn't go against the salary cap. You fire him, you pay him. McDermott doesn't have to worry about his mortgage, that's for sure. No negative feelings about hiring Brady, only positive thoughts going forward. There you go, T-Jab. I love it. The roster was so bad, and maybe Brady being young told Beanie, it's okay, I can manage with shortages of players. I can make it happen. I've seen a bit of passion for Brady, never for McD. That's true. Woke's joke, European football, I've seen also known as soccer. I've seen club hire and fire managers after one game they lost. Football clubs overseas and even down in South America do not play around. 5 years shouldn't be fired if he doesn't at least get back to where they were. And if he gets that far and loses the same spot, they should at least consider firing him. Yeah, possibly. That's where vision is the key to victory. Don't have a broad vision, which needs a large experience and the benevolence to the team of players. Stout linebackers. Boy, we've got a lot of comments in here, guys. Keeping them coming here. Brady has limited vision so far unless the roster improves. If you gave a fantastic roster to McDermott, could have gotten to the Super Bowl. That's the thing. We could argue these things right now, but the Bills get Justin Jefferson. His jerseys will sell out before the season even starts. We don't have unlimited Josh Allen years left. Get shit done now. Yes, indeed. The Pats have an amazing tight defense and offensive front and back ends. Their offensive front, their line is not good. Will Campbell is getting his lunch money taken from him. They work like a machine, don't need coaching. Yeah, everybody needs coaching. Breaking riots in Minnesota, stop over Joe Brady hire. Jesus. Justin Jefferson will bring unbelievable success. It's time to wheel and deal. Dennis Maximchuk is with us. How did I know they were going to hire within? A lot cheaper than bringing in a big-name coach from the outside. Oh, here we go again. I don't think the money has anything to do with what they're paying. Do you seriously think that had an impact on who they were going to select? Not a lot of athleticism except for Josh. Okay, Anna. Brady will need a coach. Ralph, hey, brother, I have to admit I wasn't happy initially, but the more I digest this, the more it makes sense. Stay warm. Yeah, we're doing that here. this big plasma monitor keeps it warm because I can't run the furnace in here up in this upstairs studio. It would be making all this blowing noise. We'd sound like we're on a World War II destroyer. Pagula sucks as an owner. Fixed it. I had a customer say to me today that we have no money and losing 2 linemen. It's going to be a rebuild year. We have no defense, and Pagula is the worst owner. Well, what else is he going to say? Maybe we could have a defensive coach helping him. I hope they get a bunch of strong positions in all positions. Yeah, I do too. Laughing. Brady was having second interviews with the Ravens, so not so stupid anyway. Hey, how would you like to have Mike McCarthy like the Steelers got? It's too bad Beanie has the selection in his hands again. Brutal for any top coach. Brady's all they have. He's a good guy. Poor Josh. Feels sad and stuck here. Bills should recruit the Pats OC here. See, we're getting into some new names here also. Broncos defensive pass coordinator Jim Leonard is expected to be leading candidate. Yes, we saw that. Raider Dave, 12. It was time for a breath of fresh air. I like Sean McDermott, but he just could not get the Bills over the top. Brady won't change his system too much since he's been in this organization. I like this hire. What could be worse than the 2025 roster? It can't get any worse. So go, Brady, go. Bad choice for head coach. Kept everything the same. Disaster waiting to happen. Well, Ralph, I about blew a gasket when I heard this shit. How are all the PSL owners feeling today? Don't know any. Rooting for Seattle and Sam Darnold. Yes, indeed. FTP. And you thought it stood for File Transfer Protocol. Joe Brady's a simple-minded, low IQ coach. Horrible choice. New voices needed in the Bills locker room. I think we saw that one before, but thank you, Michael Giordino. Now, we got so many here. Head coach Joe Brady's introductory press conference will take place on Thursday at 12. They'll have to replace Cromer and Tabor. Need to bring Cromer out of retirement. Joe Brady, head coach presser. That's another announcement on that. Yeah. Joe Brady knows Justin Jefferson, that's for sure. Pass game coordinator at LSU. But anyway, folks, that's what we got going on here. Thanks for sticking with me for so long. 2 hours and 12 minutes is going to scare people that want to watch us unless they're going to go to sleep with it. But it's been great. We've talked it out quite a bit. And we'll have more as the coordinators are selected here as we get into this. So thanks, everybody, for watching. Again, if you're new, please go ahead and take the nanosecond required to hit that subscribe button and be part of the Ralph Rant. And we'll keep going here and get through this offseason and see what happens. They're opening the new building. Boy, this is going to be different. And the longer we go through this, the more different it's going to seem like it's going to be. So again, thanks so much. Be good, do good, God bless, and of course, go Bills. I am the Ralph. This is the Ralph Rant out.